How to use equity in your own home to buy investment property. Once you grasp this whole concept of accessing the equity to build a property portfolio, ultimately to build your wealth, it's going to change your whole game, especially when it comes to investing. So first and foremost, let's have a chat around equity and what it is, because once you understand that, and then we'll get into how do you access it, what's the pros and cons, and ultimately how do you use that to invest in property. So first and foremost, let's understand what equity actually is. So let's say you've got a property and the property's worth £200,000. So you've got a £200,000 home and your mortgage currently is £100,000. Then the difference between what's outstanding to pay off the mortgage to what the property is worth, in this example 200, the difference between the mortgage of 100 and the value of 200 is £100,000. So in this example, you've got £100,000 of equity that you could potentially access in order to then use that money to invest in property. So there's a couple of different ways of doing that. So some things that I recommend that you do right now is look at your own home. So if you own your own home, or maybe you have some investment properties already as well, some buy-to-let properties, you can access the equity in most cases in your buy-to-let portfolio too. So this is not just limited to your own home. But for this example, let's stick to your own home. So I recommend you figure out how much is your property currently worth. And there's a few ways to actually force the equity appreciation. So you're going to be adding more equity, which we're going to discuss just now, because there's other ways than just the difference between the current market value of your property and the outstanding mortgage. You can increase that equity. So let's get into that as well. So with your own home, figure out how much is it worth. Now you can go and ask an estate agent. An estate agent will give you their opinion on what they believe your property is currently worth based on the condition that it's in. You can go and get a surveyor to come out and do a valuation on your property. But you can also do your own due diligence, do the same things that the surveyor as well as the estate agent is going to do as well. And that is looking for other comparable sales in the area. And you can do this by going on Rightmove and Zoopla and other portals to look for like properties that have sold recently, to see the condition that they're in and what did they sell for. And that will give you a feel for what your property is currently worth. And once you establish that, that's a good baseline. And understand, when you look at your own home, ask yourself some questions. Is there any home improvements you can do? Is it a new kitchen, new bathroom? Is it simply just refreshing the place up with paint and decorating, or new windows, or, is it an extension? Is it an attic conversion, adding an extra bedroom, remodeling? So all of this stuff here, when it comes to renovation, that adds value to that property. So you might want to do some home improvements, or maybe your property's already walk-in condition and no home improvements required. But understand that there, by adding value to the property, by doing those home improvements, increases the value as well. And also, we can benefit from equity increasing over the long term, because as we know, property goes up in value over a longer period of time. In fact, property normally doubles in value between every 10 to 15 years. So in this example, if you've got a property that's worth £200,000 today, likely inside the next 10 to 15 years, that property will have gone up in value and be worth £400,000. So this is where we see equity continue to even increase even further as well. So let's go back to the example where you've got a property that's currently worth £200,000 and you've got an outstanding mortgage of £100,000. The difference being that £100,000, and that's the £100,000 equity that you have. So what I would recommend that you do, whether you do it or not, at least reach out to a mortgage broker. And if you speak to that mortgage broker, they're going to be able to have a look and see what your eligibility is and how much equity you can access. So this is where I recommend that you do it. At least speak to a broker and find out how much you've got. You don't have to go and take that equity out straight away, but at least it gives you an awareness of how much equity you can get access to. And it will depend on your personal circumstance and situation, because it's your own home. You're going to be paying that additional borrowing, that additional equity that you release from the property. So this is where two things are going to take into consideration when it comes to the broker and the lender. And that is your credit rating as well as your affordability. It's different for when it's buy-to-lets because lenders look at the asset that you're buying and they know that a tenant's going to be paying the rent. And so they look at that for investment purposes. And that's why you have buy-to-let lenders. They've got a different criteria when it comes to your own residential mortgage because it'll be a residential lender who's borrowed you the money against your own home. So this is why they're going to look at your credit as well as your affordability. Your affordability is key here. Now, even though that you're able to access that equity, technically you can do anything that you want with that equity. You can use that to go and buy a car. Don't recommend it. You can use that to go and set up a new business. Or you can use that to, and of course in this example, to go and invest in property, which we'll talk about in a moment. So, first thing to do, reach out to a mortgage broker. And I happen to know a good one. So you can reach out to expressmortgages.co.uk. And if you reach out to them and mention Paul McFadden, then they will look after you and give you the best possible advice when it comes to how much equity you can get access to so that you can see what you can then use in terms of the cost of it and how you can invest in property. And if you invest in property in the right way, of course you're going to do what I'm going to suggest, then the income that you generate from the investment property will pay for the cost of you borrowing the money, plus you've got an asset that's going to go up in value. And if you do the buy, renovate and refinance strategy, you're going to be able to pull that money out and then go and pay back off your mortgage, pay back off the equity that you borrowed. Now, if that doesn't make sense, this is why you've got to be subscribed to my channel. Why? Because I put out videos all the time. I've already done a video on the whole buy, renovate and refinance strategy, so you can use one pot of cash to build a multi-million-pound property portfolio. So make sure you're subscribed and go and check out that video. But let's get back to this strategy here in terms of equity and how you access it. So you've currently got a mortgage as it is right now. Now, there's two different angles that a broker's going to work with you in the sense of accessing the equity. It could just be equity release with the same lender, or it could be a refinance to a different lender altogether. And like I said, a great broker, such as Express Mortgages, they're going to advise you on what's going to be the best for your personal circumstances situation. So you've got a couple of different options there. But let's say we're staying with the same lender. You've got £100,000 mortgage currently in this example, and you'll continue to pay that. But what will happen is based on your eligibility, like we've been saying, you might be able to access 50,000, 70,000, or even more of that equity there, and they will then give you what's called a further advance or additional borrowings, and that'll have its own individual interest rate for you to pay, and it could be on capital repayment as well. And let's say the interest rate is going to be 5%. Now, the likelihood is it's going to be less because for equity release and for residential mortgages against your own home, interest rates fall a lot less below that. But let's just go with the 5%. So if you're going to access that equity, it's going to cost you 5%. And what you've got to have in your mind is if you're going to put that into an investment property, is the income that that investment property going to generate, is that going to be more than the 5%? And if you do property right, I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is absolutely. So on the basis of that, you're buying that other investment property, the income's going to be paying for the additional borrowings that you've took out in your own home. So it's not like it's coming out of your own pocket. But more importantly, like I've been talking about, the buy, renovate, refinance model, you'll be able to pull that money back out and you've got two choices to do with it. Go and pay off your mortgage or go and buy another investment property with the same pot of cash. And that builds up that portfolio, and then you can then consider of whenever you want later on to go and pay off that equity. Because a lot of people worry about accessing and tapping into the money in your own home. Because again, what's been drilled into us for such a long period of time, and this is what, again, we need to have a different mindset approach to it, is this idea of paying down a mortgage and becoming mortgage free. And of course, that seems to be the goal for so many people. But what you need to remember is you're sitting on a gold mine here. Equity in your own home, and as we know, it's going to go up in value over time. You can add value to a property, increase that equity. Then what's the point at the very end of that to have a property that's mortgage free and all you've got is one home, when you could have used that equity at such a low cost of borrowing in the grand scheme of things in terms of the interest rate for equity release, and using that money to continue to build a property portfolio, and it allows you to build up your wealth. And this is what I love too. The lender who's going to lend as a buy-to-let mortgage on your investment properties, they are more than happy to accept equity release from your own home as a source of deposit. And that there gives you another reason why you should look at and see releasing equity from your own property to build a portfolio is the right way forward, because lenders understand that and know it. And the equity in your own home, that forms part of your net worth. And this is why that money that's there is dead if you don't use it. It's just sitting there. You've got a lot of equity in your own home, but what's it doing? It's doing nothing. And if you access that, doing this simple process that I've mentioned here, you're able to put that to work and seriously build a portfolio, as well as giving you more options and choices. This is how you can have an extra income. This is how you can, and here's the best part about this. Let's say you use that equity to go and buy one property, and you buy it, you add value, you refinance, pull that money out, and then go and put it back into that property so you've paid off the equity you borrowed. You've got two assets, your own home and the investment property. And see that whole doubling in value in 10 to 15 years? Not only is your home going to, in 15 years, say, now be worth 400, went from 2 to 400. You've got that investment property that might have been £150,000 investment property. Guess what? In 10 to 15 years, that's going to be worth 300 grand as well. And you did all of this with the equity that you had access to in your own home, just with one investment property and your own home. So imagine you were able to do that with a bunch of properties using that same pot of cash. This is why equity is a phenomenal way for people to access in order to build a portfolio. But most people are unaware about it. They're apprehensive about it, and there's a few steps. First, identify and find out how much equity you've got in your own home. So what's the outstanding mortgage? What's its current market value? Can you add more value to your own home? And more importantly, reach out to a great broker. It could be Express Mortgages, or it could be any broker, and they will be able to point you in the right direction and share with you the options and what the cost will be to borrow that additional equity from your own home to get you started on your investment journey. So I hope that gives you a high-level overview on the understanding of equity and why you should use that for investment purposes. Of course, make sure you watch any other videos that I put out on my channel, because all these videos here are designed and created to support and help you on your journey. And if you've got any specific questions on equity release specifically, pop it in the comments below and I'll be sure to go in there to respond to them. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. I'll catch up with you guys soon. All the best and bye for now.